So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's ASHEPA professional webinar. My name is Mohammed Amin Zahar, and I will be your host for this session. On behalf of ASHEPA, the African Safety, Health and Environment Professional Association, I would like to warmly thank all participants joining us today from different countries and industries. So today's webinar focuses on hazard identification and risk assessment. I will just mute. We choose this topic for ASHEPA's first webinar, not by chance, but because hazard identification and risk assessment represent the very foundation of occupational health and safety. So before implementing controls, procedures, or safety programs, an HSE professional must first be able to identify hazards. So I was saying that before to implement controls, procedures, and safety programs, we must first be able to identify hazards, assess risks, and understand how people, equipment, and the environment may be affected. So in many ways, HERA is the first essential step in building a proactive and effective safety culture. This session is especially relevant for HSE professionals, engineers, supervisors, managers, project teams, contractors, and anyone committed to strengthening workplace safety and proactive risk management. We are honored to have with us today our speaker, Mr. Wilson Kela, MSc CSP CMIOSH. Mr. Kela is a highly respected safety professional with extensive experience in occupational health and safety, risk management, and professional development initiatives across industries. So before we begin, just a few housekeeping rules. So please keep your microphones muted during the presentation. You are encouraged to post your questions in the chat through the webinar. We will reserve time for Q&A session at the end. And if you have an emergency, you can evacuate. The session is recorded. So now, without further delay, it's my pleasure to invite Mr. Wilson Kela to lead today's session. So Wilson, the floor is yours.
Hi, good afternoon to everyone, and good afternoon, Mr. Mohammed. Thank you very much for that introduction. Am I audible? Okay, cool, because my mic was muted. So again, good afternoon to everyone, and good afternoon. I just want to thank the ASHEPA Executive Committee and the President, Mr. Roni, for this amazing opportunity to present in the very first webinar session for ASHEPA. So thank you all for connecting, and I hope that you're going to have an amazing time with us today. So going straight to our topic for presentation for today, I'm going to be talking to you today about hazard identification and risk assessment. This is essentially 90% of the health and safety role. Whatever we do in the offices, whatever documents we prepare, end of the day, we need practical application in our workplaces. So hazard identification and risk assessment is the very first step of whatever we do. So I just gave a brief note on the purpose and importance of hazard identification and risk assessment to the OSH profession, which is proactive prevention of accidents. And we also have an aspect of controls. It helps us to select the best control measure to control each hazard, and it enables us to meet our regulatory compliance and, of course, improve safety culture and resource management. So our objectives for today, we are going to see how hazard identification and risk assessment can prevent accident and injuries, how we can protect the workforce, equipment, and the environment as well, and how we ensure compliance. But before that, I just want to state something. I mentioned in my previous slide about proactiveness. So based on that, I want us to first of all understand where hazard identification and risk assessment falls in the ISO 45001, which is the Occupational Safety and Health Management System standard. So because I'm using the risk-based approach, and what is the risk-based approach? Risk-based approach is all about active hazard identification. And we can see that in clause 6.2, 6.1.2.1, which tells us that organizations must proactively identify hazards arising from both routine and non-routine activities, emergency situations, human factors, and the workplace environment. It means we have to step in, identify the hazards, put in the control measures before accident happens. This is the risk-based approach. And going forward, we see that there is also the aspect of hierarchy of control, which is in clause number 8, which is about operational controls. It tells us that once this hazard has been identified, you have to apply the hierarchy of control measures starting from elimination, substitution, engineering control measures, which is about engineering out the risks, administrative control measures, and finally, we have the personal protective equipment. So with this base, our hazard identification and risk assessment session for today is going to be based on this framework. So it's very good that we understand where it falls in our management system. And of course, if we go to clause 4, which talks about worker participation, this will not be successful without involving the workers, without getting their active involvement in these initiatives. So just some key terminologies for today. We have a hazard. It's very simple, anything with the potential to cause harm. And risk is either likelihood or probability times the severity of harm. You combine them together. Later on during the session, we are going to see some examples, and we are going to see how we can apply this using the risk matrix for you to understand better. And of course, we are trying to prevent accidents. So we should understand what is an accident, which is simply an unplanned event. Nobody wants it to happen. An unplanned event that led to an injury, damage, or loss. We also have a near miss, which is an unplanned event as well, but this time it has the potential to cause harm, but it did not. And finally, we have an incident, which is the umbrella term, and it covers both accidents and near miss. So now, going straight to our topic for today, we have different types of workplace hazards. This is just an exclusive list. We have a lot more hazards. If for those who are studying in the bush, you will see that we have around 7 detailed hazard categories, hazards that are divided into almost 20 hazard categories. So this is just a few of those hazards which I've stated here. First, we have physical hazards, we have chemical hazards, we have biological hazards, we have economic hazards. This is one hazard that is mostly missed in the workplaces, which has to do with our economic workstations. We have mechanical hazards, we have electrical hazards, and of course, fire and explosion, which can never be left out. So let us look at these hazard categories with some few examples to enhance your understanding and to give you a visual of what some of these hazards look like. So the first one is physical hazards. What are physical hazards? Physical hazards are simply environmental energy sources in the workplace that can cause immediate or long-term health damage. Some of the effects include hearing loss, nerve damage, and we see that some examples are, we see noise, we see vibration, we see heat. And one thing common with this hazard is that it can affect the person that is directly exposed to it, as well as people that are not directly involved with the activity. It's a widespread risk. So if noise is being made in the site, not only the person that is creating the noise, but other people as well carrying out the responsibility. Same goes with vibration, same goes with heat and radiation. So it is very important that these hazards are carefully identified and adequately controlled. Next, we have chemical hazards. Chemical hazards, these are simply substances which could be in the solid state, in the liquid state, vapor or gases that pose risks to the human health. That means they affect your health at work. So some of the health risks involved are toxicity, sensitization, cancer, or we can also get physical risks, which involve vulnerability, corrosion, and reactivity. So if you look at some of these signs, they have meanings that uh, can easily help you to identify the chemical hazards in any chemical substance that you are using at your place of work. It is very important. This is as per the Global Harmonized System of Classification, the GHS. Next, we have biological hazards. Biological hazards, of course, these are agents that are biological in nature. We have viruses, we have bacteria, and they cause damage to your health. For example, we know sometimes we see that there's an outbreak of flu in the workplace from a virus, and most of the time people are always advised to take some precautions like flu shots before that season begins. That's a proactive approach. And then we have economic hazards, which I earlier highlighted that is mostly missed in our workplaces. Long posture, long walking in the wrong posture exposes people to economic hazards, poor economic design of your workstation, and how you lift loads. So we have some key risk factors when it comes to economic hazards. We have repetitive motion. Doing it once or twice is okay, but now when it prolongs in that repetitive motion, it becomes a danger to your health. We have upward or static postures. We have those in the assembly line. They are mostly exposed to these risks. We have use of excessive force, which has to do with heavy loads and, of course, vibration. Next category of hazards, we have machinery hazards. And for machinery hazards, we have two, which could be mechanical or non-mechanical in nature. Mechanical hazards involve hazards like crushing, impact, cutting, and friction or abrasion, which have to do with machines. People that are operating machines, it could be in the workplace, it could be in the factory, it could be in an assembly line. So precautions have to be put in place to prevent exposure of the worker to these hazards. And then, of course, we have non-mechanical hazards, which have to do again with the machine, but they are not mechanical in nature. We have examples like electricity, which is used to power the machines. We have noise, which is produced by the machines. We have vibration, and we even have burns and space constraints. Next, we have electrical hazards. If you see in the picture, you see a socket that is fully loaded, or someone using a conductive tool to access an electrical socket and it's being electrocuted. So they include dangerous conditions where contact with live wires, it has to do with contact with live wires, can cause electric shock. Here also, we have some key risks, which include exposed live parts, which is very much highlighted here. We have damaged insulation, overloaded circuits, and improper grounding. Just for an added note to this one, it is very important that we ensure all of our electrical circuits are properly earthed or grounded to the ground to prevent electric shocks. It is very important. You can put in place all your control measures, but just because it is not grounded to earth, maybe some of these safety features are not going to operate effectively the way they are designed to be. You might say you have a residual current device installed, but the residual current device is not going to work if it does not detect leakage to earth. And how does it detect leakage to earth when your equipments are properly grounded to earth? So I always like to emphasize on this because I'm doing a deep research on electrical safety, and that will be shared with the public very soon. So the next one is about fire and explosion. Of course, we have the fire triangle. All the three elements have to come together for ignition to take place. So it's all about preventing the ignition source and the fuel coming together, because we cannot, of course, remove oxygen from the atmosphere. We also need oxygen to breathe. So yeah, so these are the different hazard categories. Some, I will say. Next is what are the different methods that we can use to identify these hazards? So the first two methods, I focus on the proactive approach, and the first one here is workplace inspection. Workplace inspection is a proactive monitoring initiative which involves examining people, how they work, examining the processes that you have designed to carry out your activities, examining the equipment and machines that you use, and of course, the environment. The environment can sometimes miss out, but people need lighting to work. People need space. People need ventilation to carry out their works effectively. Some of us here in the Middle East, we see that if we are exposed to extreme heat, there are side effects. We have heat stress, heat strokes that can affect us. And of course, we see that this workplace inspection, there's a high profile workplace inspection, which is called a safety tour, which involves the senior management to be involved in that activity. And in that manner, you are going to be directly complying with clause 5.1 of the ISO 45001, which is about leadership commitment. And of course, it's very good if you use a checklist, but you should not be based solely on the checklist because that checklist has to be updated as requirements are constantly changing. Because if you use a checklist, you will see that most of the times items out of the checklist are not inspected. So this is the first one. The next one is job safety analysis. It's also somehow like safety inspection, but here the tasks are being broken down. The activity is broken down into smaller tasks because if you see the task as a whole, it looks so big. But you see that if you break it down step by step, it's now easy for you to identify the hazards using inspection or any other proactive monitoring method and put in place control measures at every step to make sure that what happens, people are able to carry out their job and go home safe. It's all about going home safe. It's all about coming to work and going back home even better than you came, not in a lesser state. And of course, we use hierarchy of controls to select the right and proper control measure. Other methods of hazard identification involve incident and accident reports, which we should not pray for. Anyway, it is very important that accidents are investigated, root cause are determined, and preventive actions are implemented to ensure that these accidents don't take place again. But we should not rely on that. We should not rely on accident statistics. Worker consultation, again, going to clause 5.4, which involving the workers, let them have a say because they are the front line workers. They are the one involved with the hazards. They are the one directly exposed to the risks. They can better give you suggestions based on how they feel, how they carry out their operations. And then we also have safety audit findings and manufacturer manuals or safety data sheets. Now, with these hazard identification methods, now where can you look for hazards? Where can you find these hazards? It's very important because you can have the methods, you can know that we have different hazard categories, we have different methods of identifying hazards, but if you don't know how to or where to find these hazards, it becomes an issue because safety starts with identifying what is the issue. So now we have routine daily operations, that's activities that are always done on a routine basis. We also have non-routine activities like maintenance. Maintenance is not done every day. There is a plan for it, and these are sometimes classified as high-risk activities. So you have to implement permit to work systems to make sure that every checks are carefully made and the control measures put in place. We also have emergencies like fire evacuations, spill responses, where we can identify potential hazards in the emergency scenarios. We also have human factors. The human factors is a very important aspect where we can look for hazards because it has to do with how people work, how people behave. Why do we place two workers in one activity? One is working in a safe manner and the other one is not complying. Why is it that when someone moves from one organization to the next, they change their methods of working? They used to comply, now they stop complying. It is very important. And of course, we need to look at the environment again, which has to do with light, ventilation, space. So that is that for hazard identification. Now, let us go into the risk assessment process. The risk assessment is a 5-step process which has to do with identifying hazards, determining who might be harmed and how they can be harmed. You know, most of the times I used to emphasize on this how, because the how is very important in the control measure. Evaluating the risks, which has to do with evaluating the actions that has already been put in place, if they are there, and it's going to help you to determine further control measures. Here, we use the risk matrix. Here, we use likelihood and severity to determine the risk level, and it helps us to prioritize the actions that have to be put in place. We are going to look at it later on in this presentation. And of course, you have to record all your findings and review the risk assessment as it is required, because this should be a live document and should continuously reflect the exact condition of your workplace. If you notice one thing, I did not say your construction site, I said your workplace, because occupational safety and health is all about the workplace, not a construction site. You have to identify all risks involved in your workplace. So now, what are the steps in risk assessment? I will go detailed. So the first step is identifying the hazard that has been dealt with. So we will just go straight away to determine who might be harmed and how they can be harmed. So who are those that can be harmed? We have, of course, we have the workers, which include laborers, cleaners, maintenance staff. We have a very long list of people who might be harmed. We have contractors, which are people that you hire to carry out your tasks. We have visitors that come to our workplaces for one reason or the other. We have members of the public. Members of the public is very important, because your activity should not affect someone that is going about their daily jobs or daily duties, or they are just going around for a sight see. And then a special consideration is made for those with those that we call vulnerable people. And vulnerable people have to do with young people, people that are not up to a certain age. I would say 16 years of age or 18, depending on the region where they are located. We have new and expectant mothers. You say new and expectant mothers. So it means that even if you're expecting a baby as a mother, and after that baby comes, there are still a lot of precautions that have to be taken to ensure your safe return to work. We have disabled workers and we have also lone workers. These are all special cases that have to be properly identified. Now, once we have established those that can be harmed and how, we now go on to evaluating the risks. In terms of risk evaluation, we have 3 methods. We have the qualitative method, which most of us are aware of, which gives us the low, medium, high classification, where risks can either be low, it can be high, or it can be medium, depending on the of the likelihood or probability, I would say, and the severity of the outcome. So if you look at it here on the chart, it is it's very clear, which tells us either a yes or a no. And then we have a semi-quantitative risk metrics, semi-quantitative method, which the risk metrics that we use. It could be a 3x3, it could be a 5x5 risk metrics. It depends on your standards. It depends on the region where you are. It depends on your industry. It depends on the person that is giving you the task to carry out. There are other factors as well, which uses consequences or likelihood and probability to classify risks as well. So, and finally, we have the quantitative assessment. Now, this one actually gives you values. It gives you exact values. There's a range. It gives you values where you know that an accident is likely to occur. And with this one, a lot of calculation has to be put in place. There are several parameters that you have to implement. And some examples, fault tree analysis, event tree analysis. So this, of course, will be the topic for another day, but this is a very precise method of evaluating risks. The other ones, we are just using our own judgment based on the events, based on the possible outcomes to see how we can classify risks and put in the proper control measures. So next, let's expand a little bit on the semi-quantitative method, which has to do with the risk metrics. So you understand, I did a few examples, so you actually understand what I said. So I said risk is likelihood times severity. So now let us look at an example, and you'll be surprised that this example is taken from the NEBOSH IGC textbook. It's very informative. Never forget your roots, never forget where you came from. Always go back to basics, things to understand. So if you look at an example, is a trailing electrical cord is positioned across a busy corridor. Might be created as an electrical cord is placed across a busy corridor. So the fact that it's a busy corridor, it means that what? Many people are coming across the corridor. So there's a high likelihood that people are going to trip from this cable. That is why you see the likelihood is placed at 5. So our likelihood is placed here, 5. And then it says the severity of harm if someone falls is placed at 4. Because if someone trips, of course, they are going to fall. And if they fall, it's going to give maybe a severe outcome. It's placed at 4. So we have 20 as the overall risks. And where do we have 20 on the chart? You see that what? Here we have 20, which gives us a proposal that at 20, you have to suspend the activity because it is critical. Almost everyone is exposed to that risk. Next, another example is, let us see how this risk has been reduced. So you see that the trailing cable on the floor has been moved close to the wall. It means that what? Before, I would say that the cable was like this, trailing across. Now, it has been moved to the edge of the wall. This is the wall. It has been moved to the edge. So people can pass like this. So you see that the height has reduced to 1. And of course, the severity remains the same because if someone gets in contact with that cable, they're still going to fall and the outcome is the same. So you see that just by working on the likelihood, the risk has come right down to fall, which is acceptable. So this is how we can practically use the risk matrix to calculate our level of risk and how we can put in place control measures. So it's all about moving from the red zone through the amber and yellow zones to the green zones. The green zones are what we should strive to get in our workplaces. Everyone is safe because even at the amber zone, even at the yellow zones, there's still what we call a high level of residual risks, which means that what you still have to put in place several actions.
You are muted, boss.
You are muted, Wilson.
Muted.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Mohammed, I think when you are trying to meet some people that are talking, you should notify me.
Yeah.
Because when you meet everyone, it becomes muted as well. Thank you. So,
hello.
This is a practical application of a worker that is employed to feed a lion. So if you look at the first scenario, the likelihood is very high. And of course, if the lion eats him, the severity of the outcome is going to be very high. So this one is classified as an extreme risk because it gives you around 20 to 25 value. Now, let us look at a control measure has been put in place. Now, the worker still goes into the cage, but now he has been equipped with a steel body armor. Okay, now let us say even if the lion is not able to eat him, but maybe with the force, he can be crushed. So there is still a probability of harm. And again, you see that what it still gives us at around the value of 20, which we see here, which is now a moderate risk. And the next one is, you see now the cage has been redesigned such that he cannot go inside. Just his hands can be used to feed the lion. There is still a certain level of exposure. Even though it is now a lesser risk, but his hands are still exposed to the lion. It is a lesser risk. This is what I was saying. Even though it gives us a value of 9, likelihood and the severity. It gives us a value of 9, which is at the yellow zone. We still have to strive to bring it down to green. That is why you see now a proper engineering control has been made in place where he goes in, where there's a total separation from between the lion and the walker, and there is a gate mechanism where he goes in, he locks the gate, goes in, places the food, and he can slide the gate later on, and the lion can eat freely. Everyone goes home safe. The lion is able to eat properly, and the walker is able to go home safe and alive, and it cannot become food for the lion. So this is how we should open our minds to think when we are trying to implement control measures. We should be practical. It's all about trying. It's about trying it, pushing yourself to the limit, saying that no, I have this, I have this. Some people usually say safety is common sense. Yes, I will tell you, safety is common sense. If you just use your mind and make it flexible, you will see that most of the actions you can implement it. Now, that was all about risk evaluation. Now that we have evaluated the risks, how were we able to determine that this should be implemented from here to here? It's all about the hierarchy of control measures. What is the hierarchy of control measures? The hierarchy of control measures, this is a system that is based on a 5-step approach to effectively control hazards in our workplaces. So it starts with elimination, which has to do with physically removing the hazard, and it's done. Or we can substitute it, which has to do with replacing the hazard to a one with a lesser risk. And next is engineering controls, which has to do with engineering out the risks, preventing people from coming in contact with the hazard. And of course, administrative controls and PPE. This is the standard, this is the worldwide standard. But for me as an individual, I will tell you honestly that my hierarchy of controls end here. Administrative controls and PPE, I think they are just there to complete the triangle from my personal perspective, because it has to do with changing the way people work, dealing with people, and personal protective equipment. Just, I can say it gives you some protection, but it's a false sense of protection that you get. But either ways, we are still going to discuss it. Now, the first one, elimination, is all about avoiding the activity. And this is a very good example. Know that it creates a fire risk, and there are other precautions that have to be put in place to prevent fire from occurring. You can simply change the process by using nut and bolts. Like if you see here, instead of welded joints, instead of connecting this steel with welded joints, we can use nuts and bolts. See that fire risk has been totally eliminated from the activity. Another example is using a lifting equipment to eliminate manual handling. But one thing is that when you are eliminating risks, you should make sure that you do not bring in another more severe risk. So you should carefully calculate it. Now, the next one is substitution. What is substitution all about? It's about replacing the hazard, bringing a hazard or something that is similar but of a lesser risk. An example, we have our diesel-operated machines, which can be replaced with battery-operated machines. So you eliminate fire risks, you eliminate noise. There are lots of things that you eliminate. But again, you should be waiting for the risks that are going to be created by the use of electric vehicles. We also have oil-based paints being replaced with water-based paints. You eliminate fire, eliminate you eliminate fire, these volatile chemicals or vapors, and bring in place another chemical, which is water-based paints, but it has its own risks as well. We have to consider the safety data sheet and the hazards and the risks that it brings into place. And the next one is the hierarchy, the engineering control measures, which is all about engineering out the risks. How can you prevent the hazard or the person from coming in contact with the hazard? This is all about engineering controls. This is where you see some safety professionals get their names that I'm a safety engineer, because you are an expert in engineering out risks. because end of the day, the activity has to take place. Your employer needs output, but he needs everyone to be safe. So if you are able to engineer out risks at your workplaces, then already 90% of your job is done. So it's all about isolation or total enclosure. And we see the same mechanism that has been used here for the example which we use with the worker who is employed to feed a lion. And of course, we have this machine. We see that the rotating part has been closed with a fixed guard. So it means even if you want to get in contact with the rotating part, you are not able to, because you are physically separated from the rotating part. In order for you to access that rotating part, you have to use machines or other equipment to actually take it out. So you see that with this measure, the hazard and the individual have been separated. We have another example of, we have several examples of engineering control measures, but here I just highlighted a few which have to do. Another one is safety device and safety features. A practical example is our microwave ovens. You see that the microwave, within 1 minute, your food heats up with very high temperatures. So what happens? What is the mechanism? How is this microwave able to heat your food with that much high temperature? Imagine if you are exposed to it, what happens to your hands? It burns, of course. So you see there is a safety device mechanism that is placed at the door of the microwave. Immediately you open it, it stops. And the microwave is not going to go functional when the door is open. These are safety devices. Again, it's all about preventing the person from the hazard, physical separation. Another example is our elevators. You see that the elevator cannot move from the landing platform unless the doors are closed. So we have an interlock guard or an interlock switch, which is installed. Once the gate is closed, now the elevator can move. So these are all safety devices. And of course, we have administrative control, which has to do with procedures and how people behave at work, which include safe systems of work, developing a safe working method, how people can safely carry out their tasks step by step. And again, you see that when this safe method of working is developed, again, we have engineering controls implemented into it. It's also about reducing the exposure, the time and the frequency. It's about reducing the exposure in terms of the distance of the person or the worker exposed to the risks. It's all about providing proper information, proper instruction, training, and of course, competent supervision. And finally, in the hierarchy of control, we have the PPE, which is the personal protective equipment, which equips people where people are able to wear it to protect themselves. We have helmets, we have safety goggles, safety glasses, steel-toed boot, reflective jacket, face shield. Depending on the activity you're carrying out, there are several task-specific PPE that you can use. And now, implementing these control measures, when you have selected the right control measures based on your risk level, you have to communicate the findings using these different methods of communication within your organization. That is a topic for another day, but we have several broadcasting methods, which could be through box talk, through emails, through internet system, or you can organize a meeting. We have to assign responsibilities. If you put in place control measures without assigning a responsible person for that action, your risk assessment remains incomplete. And of course, time frames are very important. You communicate the findings, you assign a person responsible for each action, and you allocate a time frame. The time frame, again, will be determined by the level of risks. And of course, you have to put in place action to verify that these control measures have been implemented. You have to verify it. It is very important, and ensure, of course, the use of proper personal protective equipment. And then now we have under monitoring and review, which is the fourth step. You have to ensure regular inspections out. You have to ensure incident investigations are done for both accidents and near miss, as well as dangerous occurrences. You have to ensure that performance indicators are used to track your progress. You have to ensure continuous improvement, which is again one of the clauses of the ISO 45001. Your system should continuously be improving. And finally, we have periodic reviews of the risk assessment. When should you review your risk assessment? People change in the processes, new equipment, new technology. These are some of the requirements that needs you to review your risk assessment to keep it continuous and valid. And of course, we have some very important documentation and record keeping, which includes risk assessment forms, method statements, or we can say safe system of work, permit to work systems, inspection reports, and training records. And finally, assigning roles and responsibilities. We have, without the involvement of the senior leadership, of course, our efforts are almost close to zero. The senior leadership is very important, and the key responsibility is approving policy and allocation of resources. We need competent people, competent health and safety persons. We need managers and supervisors to enforce these actions that have been identified. Employees have a duty to follow the procedures that have been provided to them to work in a safe manner and report hazards. And of course, specialist roles like first aiders and fire safety professionals. So some of the challenges that people face doing risk assessment, we have to do with lack of awareness. If they don't know, if they are not competent. Poor hazard reporting, if a hazard is not properly reported, you cannot effectively control it. Inadequate training, time pressures, and weak enforcement of the actions. And finally, we have leadership commitment involving workers in risk assessments, which are best practices that should be implemented. Use of visual tools like signages, diagrams, regular toolbox work, continuous training, and a strong safety culture. So that is that for hazard identification and risk assessment, which I prepared for you. So right now, this presentation was powered by Lifeline. Lifeline is my personal platform. But now I'm going to hand over the floor to Mr. Mohammed for question and answers. And after that, I'm going to give you a brief, just 5 minutes talk about Lifeline, what we are all about, what we do. So thank you, Mr. Mohammed. Over to you. Until I come back for Lifeline, we can go to the question and answer sessions.
Thank you very much, Wilson, for this insightful presentation. We will now begin the Q&A session. I don't see any question in the chat, so if you have any question, please put it in the chat. I'd like to ask one question myself. So Wilson, based on your experience, what are some of the most common mistakes organizations make when conducting risk assessments?
In my experience, the most common mistakes that I would say organizations make when conducting risk assessment is about identifying what is the hazard. That's the most common mistake, because some organizations might have a method of working. There are organizations that have been embedded in a very old cultural way of working, that it becomes a routine, that even when you try to bring in new methods, safer methods, you face resistance. So hazard identification is a key area, or a key one of the highest mistakes that most organizations make. And because they are not able to properly identify the hazards, of course, the rest of the process becomes really invalid. It's not really effective. So this is what I see based on my experience. That is why in my training or mentoring sessions, you see, I always emphasize on hazard identification. It is very important. I stress a lot in hazard identification. Some people, they say I have sniper eyes, because when I look, it's like I see everything that is wrong. I have trained myself in that way. So it is very important that you understand how to properly identify the hazard, because that is the root cause. That is the main issue that you are trying to control.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Wilson. I have here a question from David. What is a dynamic risk assessment?
A dynamic risk assessment, I would say, we have generic and dynamic risk assessment. Generic risk assessment has to do with carrying out risk assessment across all the activities in your organization, and a dynamic risk assessment now has to do with more specific, and as well it is ongoing. That means it changes as the activity changes. It changes as the steps or as you progress with the activities within your organization. Let us say it can be a manufacturing industry. You have to manufacture something. You understand? You'll see that the risk assessment start to use at the beginning of the manufacturing process is not going to be the same at the end. So it changes along the way because the requirements changes, the demands changes, the people change, the equipment you use change, the processes change along the way. So you have to, dynamic risk assessments are used to track the progress of this activity to keep the risk assessment valid and live throughout the process.
Yeah, we're clear. So I have another question here from Rashid. What is the difference between risk assessment and GSA, job safety analysis?
Risk assessment, I would say, is when I started the presentation, I gave the difference between an incident, an accident, and a near miss. So an incident is like the umbrella name. Then we have accidents and near miss coming below this family. It's almost the same thing with risk assessment and JSA. Risk assessment, you can carry out a risk assessment for an activity, as a whole, but now JSA takes that activity, breaks that activity down step by step, identifies the hazard in each step and put in place the control measure. So just to clarify you, a JSA is used to develop a risk assessment. Because if you go to a risk assessment template, you're going to see the activity, the first activity, second activity, third activity, fourth activity. Those are the steps in the process. That is JSA incorporated in a risk assessment template. So that is the difference. JSA is actually used now to develop the risk assessment. And of course, now you know that when you have your risk assessment, it is ready. The entire risk assessment has been communicated to the workers. Now, where are you in your risk assessment based on the activity you're carrying out? Are you in the first step? You follow the control measures. Are you in the second step? You follow the control measures. Are you in the third step? You follow the control measures. So JSA is incorporated in the risk assessment process, and it helps you to identify hazards. That is why I placed it as a hazard identification method.
Thank you very much, Wilson, for this clear answer. I'll pick up another question. What methods are used to prioritize risks?
The method that is used to prioritize risks is, I would say, is the risk metrics, which I explained earlier, likelihood and severity of the risks based on the risk classification, which could be high, could be medium, could be low for a semi-quantitative risk assessment process. Based on that, you know which risks to prioritize and which actions to, first of all, make sure that they are implemented to control that risk, because you cannot deal with the high risks in the same way, as well as the same way you deal with the low risks. And then you move to the medium risk and the low risk. It is all about using the risk matrix. It's all about the likelihood and the severity of the harm. Use it, connect it to the risk rating matrix, and then you'll get your risk level, and then you can continue with your prioritization.
Okay, so we'll pick up another question. How do you tell if people are overestimating or underestimating a risk?
Please, can you come again?
How do you tell if people are overestimating or underestimating a risk?
Okay, how can you tell if people are overestimating or underestimating the risk? When we look at one of my slides, I talked about implementing the controls. Now, when you have implemented, you have used your risk metrics to identify the critical risks. You have put in place the control measures based on the hierarchy of controls. You have to monitor. Why do you monitor? You monitor your actions to see if they are proportionate to the risks, if they are practical. You cannot put control measures that are not practical, that people cannot cope with, people cannot work with. Understand? Because these are the things that make people to either overestimate or underestimate. And one other thing is that what you have to monitor to see that people actually understand the control measures that have been put in place. It is there to protect them if they are able to use it, because it's useless putting in place control measures for people that are not able to use it or they don't know why. A simple example is the use of a face shield. If you're carrying out a curtain activity, people have been carrying this activity out using safety glasses. You come in to introduce a face shield. It's like nuisance if they don't understand why. You understand? They can underestimate it that I have been using a safety goggles for all my life. Nothing has ever happened. Why should I use a face shield? It disturbs me. I have to attach it to my helmet. Or another example is if you're bringing in a face shield that cannot be attached to the helmet of the individual, what happens? Understand? So these are some of the things that make people to either overestimate or underestimate risks. So all your control measures should be practical and applicable to that specific scenario. So because we say eliminate the risks, it doesn't mean you just look for elimination. Because we say substitute doesn't mean you just substitute. When you implement the control measures, you monitor it to see that it is effective and it is producing the results that you desire. If yes, okay, see how you can improve it. If no, then you see how you can modify it. So that is what I can say.
It's very clear, Wilson. Thank you. Maybe we will pick up a last question. So how do you solve the problem of if you put control measures and you make follow-up and still nothing is done? How do you go about as safety officer? Do you want I repeat
First
again?
of all, as a safety officer, I don't know the. Yeah, you can repeat again.
How do we solve the problem of if you put control measures and you make follow-up and still nothing is done? How do you go about as a safety officer?
See, there is something that we call ownership. Ownership is very important. How do you bring in the aspect of ownership? If you go back to clause 5 of the ISO 45001, you'll see that it is at the center of the management system. It has to do with leadership, involvement, and worker participation. How were these control measures implemented? Did you involve the senior leadership? Did you involve the workers that are involved with this activity? Do the leaders know why you are implementing these actions? Do the workers know why you're implementing these actions? Do you have their buy-in? Buys into to are bound to follow it. So the first thing I'll tell you is that what? Make sure that you try to involve your senior management in everything you do. Because without senior management involvement, you will just be struggling. You'll just be struggling and fighting all around. And the next thing is that what? You should bring together the senior management and the workers when you put in place control measures. That is why we have safety committee meetings, safety committee forums, where they can interact together, put in place the control measures. Because I was involved in the risk assessment process, I know that I owe it a duty to respect and follow that control measure because I understand the reasons why. So it's all about dealing with your senior management. It's all about involving your workers rather than just going and imposing your own personal beliefs. Your personal beliefs can be right, but there is a method, there's a structure that you have to follow. And as a safety officer, I also believe that you should have a safety engineer or a manager that you can see how you can escalate this issue further if it persists. So that is what I can say.
Thank you very much, Wilson, for this excellent and practical presentation. And thank you to all participants for your engagement, questions, and contribution through the session. So today's webinar highlighted the importance of proactive hazard identification, effective risk assessments, and the implementation of appropriate control measures to prevent incidents, and also strengthen workplace safety culture. At ASHEPA, we remain committed to promoting continuous professional development, knowledge sharing, and stronger HSE practices across Africa and beyond. We encourage everyone to stay connected with ASHEPA and participate in our upcoming professional learning events and webinars. On behalf of ASHEPA, thank you once again for joining us today. And maybe I leave a last word to you, Wilson, before closing.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Mohammed. So I would just like to take the rest of the 4 minutes that are left to talk a little bit about my platform before I close for the day, if that's okay. So I am the founder of Lifeline, the platform that powered this presentation. So I'll just talk a little bit about who we are. So Lifeline, our mission is to make safety knowledge more practical, like you saw today, more accessible and more impactful through our educational, professional, and development industry collaboration programs, which is one of the things that is happening today. So our vision is to create a strong network of safety professionals who are equipped with the knowledge, skills, and support needed to build a safer workplace. Okay. Sorry, I will just do that right away.
That's okay. You can carry on.
Just give me a moment. Let me share my screen. Just take a second. Okay, I guess it's visible now, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So at Lifeline, what we do? These are some of the initiatives that we do. One of our core initiatives is the Pay It Forward program. This program is designed to remove the financial barrier to aspiring health and safety professionals. It's all about, we support you, we give you 100% funding if you want to take the NEBOSH exams or the exams that you need for your safety career. We fund that, we fund it for you, but in turn, we support you to get a job, get into the field, stabilize, and then you have to pay it forward to another person. So it's a continuous chain. It's a sustainable chain that has been designed to continuously support new and aspiring health and safety professionals. We have the first set of winners for this program, and we are pleased to say that by the end of this month, we are going to be launching the next phase for selection, which we are going to be selecting 3 new members to sponsor them through the NEBOSH International General Certificate. We also carry out safety consulting activities, both for individuals and organizations. What any issues that you have, support you to strengthen your compliance and reduce the operational risks. We also organize specialized safety training, one-on-one. If you have a specific activity or a specific issue, we are here to support you with it. And one of our signature activities is the Lifeline Quizcast events. We organize virtual quiz nights where we bring professionals to come together to challenge each other. But it's a very amazing and engaging learning opportunity. It is different from me talking to you from the beginning to the end, like I did in this presentation. So we moved from that into seeing that we have 5, 6, 7, 8 people speaking at once, sharing their ideas, people coming in to give their contributions as well. And of course, we have podcasts and webinar sessions, and we also empower women in safety. You're all welcome if you intend to support any of our initiatives through sponsorship, So right now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'll be posting the link to my page in the chat. You're welcome to follow us and stay connected with us for any future events, any future quiz nights, or any future collaborations. Thank you so much, Mr. Mohammed. Thank you again to the entire ASHEPA community and executives. I'm very grateful to have been given this amazing opportunity. I take it very seriously. I do not take it lightly. So thank you again so much. And that's that from my side. I'll just be posting my LinkedIn handle in the chats now. Feel free to connect with me. Feel free to reach out at any time for any possible collaboration. That's it in the chat box. Thank you again so much. That's that from my side.
Thank you very much, Wilson, and thank you once again for joining us today. Goodbye, everyone.
Good night.
Goodbye, sir.
Goodbye.
Sir.
Bye.
Thanks
Thank you.
so
Goodbye.
much. Thanks so
Goodbye.
much. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr.
Goodbye.
Wilson.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, sir.